So there's a strong possibility that you've been taught that competency needs to come first. Prove that you know what you're doing, build the respect, and then build the rapport and worry about the relationship afterwards. Now, the research says that that is backwards and it is costing you your leadership effectiveness. I'm Zoe Thompson. I'm a leadership and performance coach. I help overwhelmed leaders to become more efficient, more effective, build a confident and resilient, self-sufficient team so that they can get the job done, do a great job as a leader, but also go home on time and take a big week off, knowing that their teams have got things handled in their absence. And in today's video, I want to talk about one of the things that comes up a lot in coaching sessions, in the group programs that I run, and that leading with competency first, trying to prove that you know what you're doing, is not helping you to be an efficient and effective leader. The order does matter, and I'm going to tell you why. So here's what the research says. Vanessa Van Edwards has researched this specifically. I recommend her book Cues to a lot of the people that I work with. It's a great book looking at how our body language can influence how we communicate and the relationships that we build. In addition to her research, Amy Cuddy has looked at how warmth and competence can account for 90% of how people perceive you. And it's so important. When you lead with competency first, people see you as capable, don't necessarily trust you. Trust goes down when people feel that you are more focused on proving yourself rather than making that connection. And this is especially true at senior levels, where leaders feel that they might need to maintain that professional distance, that they might need to demonstrate their ability to lead, their competency to lead, their capability to lead, rather than build those relationships with the people that they are leading. There's a networking parallel here. And something that I noticed when I came out of the public sector and started going to networking meetings as a business owner, and something that's talked about a lot in the business world, but not necessarily in the public sector. And certainly from my experience, it wasn't something that I had heard before. And that's the term like, know, and trust. In business, people talk about people buying from people, about building those relationships, building that rapport. That is what builds trust, and that's what helps people to make that buying decision. So a lot of the conversations in the business world are around building that rapport, building those relationships. Yet still, and we have probably all experienced it both in networking meetings and meetings in the workplace, still there are people who come in and lead with competency and then try and follow it up with warmth. And the order is really important. When we lead with competency first, it does not build the same trust, rapport, and relationship as when we lead with warmth. So if your team respects your competency and doesn't fully trust you, you've got half of the equation. We need to work that through and lead with the warmth, follow with the competency for that to shift. When I was first promoted to senior manager, there were a number of elements that probably influenced how I showed up. Certainly in the first couple of weeks. I was newly promoted into senior leadership. I was 30 at the time, so very aware that people had a certain judgment around my age and therefore my level of experience and ability. I was the only civilian going into the senior leadership team, was also the only female at that point going into the senior leadership team. I felt that I had a lot to prove. I wasn't being told that I had a lot to prove. A lot of that was my internal dialogue, but I felt like I had a lot to prove. It's a very male-dominated environment, very experienced people who have been in the police service a very long time, very good at what they do. And I felt I had to prove my competency. I felt that it was really important and most important for me to show up and prove my ability, my competency, and therefore gain that credibility very quickly. Now, what that overtook was thinking I needed to show up with that before I showed up authentically, before I showed up and built that rapport with people. I walked in with a mindset of showing up as somebody who knew what they were talking about, was confident, was assertive, and I kept a professional distance because that's what I thought senior leaders did. I thought there was a gap between where you worked and where your team were. And I completely missed leading with connection first, which my whole experience in leadership up until that point was all about relationship building. It was building that rapport, building that trust. And yet, when I got promoted into senior leadership, something in my brain switched and I thought it needed to be different. And I completely missed it. I thought that showing up as me, I thought that showing up authentically would potentially undermine my credibility. And I was so focused on proving that competency that I lost myself in the process. I was definitely not showing up as me. I mean, I bought jackets with shoulder pads and wore clothing that I had never worn before. And it wasn't just about the persona that I was trying to get across. It was how I was showing up, how I was engaging with people. And it just wasn't me at all. And it was not only exhausting for me, it wasn't working. It really wasn't working. And I found that the more time I was there, the more one-to-one conversations I had, the more I started to relax a little bit, the more I started to get to know people, the more I let them get to know me, and the more things started to shift. And the more I started to realize that actually I had maybe got it a little bit wrong and that I needed to approach things differently if I wanted to show up in that department in the way that was most aligned with who I am and how I wanted to lead. Yeah, it was exhausting and nope, it didn't work. And I think once I realized that, and it's always the way, isn't it? Your own self-awareness shines a light on it. Once you shine the light on it, it's very hard to be able to unsee it. And it really helped me to show up differently. And that was definitely front of mind when I then got promoted again, that I really wanted to work with building those relationships first, and that in itself would help me to be able to prove my credibility and competency. What I did notice, once I'd noticed it for myself, was that actually there were a number of leaders in the organization. Some were leading with warmth and some were leading with competency. And when I looked at who was leading in the different orders, I was able to see how people were showing up and how people were connecting with them, how people were respecting them as a leader. And the warmth would create those conditions for people where not only would they be able to prove their competency and credibility, but it would stick a lot easier. And I also found that actually the leaders that I respected most were the ones that led with warmth. And the leaders that I actually found I was less trustful with were the ones that were leading with competency, the ones that were very quick to tell me how good they were at what they did, the ones that were very quick to put their rank, put their level in the room rather than talking things through and seeing everybody around the table as having something to contribute. Once my armor slipped and I started showing up as myself, it changed. It helped me to show up more in alignment with who I am. It meant that I could challenge with some humor. I could show up and have that banter, have those conversations with people, and know that actually it's okay for my personality to come through. And it did shift. The damage was already done for some people. I absolutely admit that for some people, they could see this change in me. And I think, to be fair, the question for them was, well, which is the real version? But actually, for a lot of people, and for those that it certainly really mattered with, the people that are reporting in to me directly, it helped build those relationships. It helped build that trust. And I didn't need to push quite as hard as I had needed to in those first few weeks. Things just fell into place a lot easier. This is why it's so important to lead with the warmth first. Show up as a human and not just your title. It's so important to build that connection before you need to demonstrate any level of competency. And once you've built that connection, then you can back it up because that rapport is there. You can prove that you know what you're doing. And actually, this is where the actions do speak more loudly than words. So what do practical warmth cues look like? They're open posture. It's very genuine eye contact, not forced eye contact. It's leaning in when someone's talking, and it's a lot of we language over I language. The warmth cues help to build that connection. Now, a lot of people will talk about mirroring body language. If you are building that connection, you will naturally do that. In the same way with open posture and body language, the more comfortable you are, the more relaxed you are, the more your own natural body language comes through. Having that connection, giving people that time and your attention will definitely help. Now, there is a bit of a pattern around the overuse of first names. Personally, I don't like it, but I know other people don't even notice it. It's nice to show that you have remembered somebody's first name. I think there was a technique taught some years ago where using the name at the end of every sentence would help build that rapport. And there's a very natural way of doing that. I think there's also a very forced way of doing that. I don't know about you. I would be interested to hear what your thoughts are, but I know for me, I don't need my name dropped at the end of every sentence, Zoe. I know that it's me that you're talking to, especially when it's a one-to-one conversation, Zoe, and I don't need my name dropped in there all the time. For me, that doesn't work. Maybe it does work for you. But for me, it's something that I don't feel comfortable with. I feel it feels forced. And this is the difference between those natural warmth cues, the smiling, the eye contact, the open body language, leaning in, leaning back, not stepping into somebody's space, but holding space for those conversations is really important. Competency cues. This isn't necessarily the words of saying, I'm really good at what I do. It's how we show up. It's how we present ourselves. So it is an authoritative tone. It is more purposeful pauses instead of fillers. And it's a grounded presence. And for leaders, this is so important. Being able to ground yourself when those conversations are chaotic, when everything around you is speeding up and people are getting louder. Actually, just taking that step back, taking a moment, taking a breath before you speak can make all of the difference. And in my experience, a lot of people are looking at leaders in these moments in the same way that we look at staff on an aeroplane when there's turbulence. I'm sure I am not the only person that the minute there is turbulence, I am looking straight at the staff to look to see whether or not there is any element of panic in their body language. And then that tells me whether or not I need to be worried. It's the same in leadership. Our teams will look at us. Do we look grounded? Do we look calm? Do we look clear? Do we sound clear with how we are communicating what happens next? Because that trust, that rapport is essential, not just in what we say, but in how we say it. The danger zone, the fidgeting, the crossing of arms, the slouching, it all signals insecurity. Telling people what level of management you are, telling people how much experience you have, telling people what you've achieved often comes across as a disconnect and overcompensating. So it's really important to bring it in if you need to. Bring it in when asked. Definitely don't lead with it. The authenticity is really important. Something I talk through with clients. You are you and you bring yourself to work. It's not turning everything off when you get to work and putting a different hat on, a different mask, and a different body armor on. We need to recognize that actually we might present ourselves slightly differently in a professional environment. We might turn some things up. We might turn some things down. We still are us. We are just adjusting those behaviors to meet the people or the situation that we are in. It's knowing your audience. You can dial things up and you can dial things back so that other people feel comfortable. Having that awareness that actually something that's very comfortable for us might be uncomfortable for others. And having that awareness and adjusting our own behaviors to accommodate that is a great leadership skill. When you lead with warmth first, the competency lands differently. People do listen, people do follow, and people will develop. There will be people who watch and learn from how you show up in meetings, how you show up in the workplace. People are watching, people are listening, and people are learning. In the same way that we observe those who inspire us, those who we aspire to lead like, we watch, we learn, we listen. And when we model our own behaviors on those who are aspirational and inspirational to us, we learn and we grow in the same way. This isn't mirroring, it's modeling. And there is a difference. When we mirror, we are replicating what we see somebody else do. When we're modeling, we're looking at what they do really well. And then we are adapting that to work for us so that it is authentic for us. And warmth comes from a very authentic place. You're showing up as you in a way that is comfortable for you and a way that you know is your level of warmth. In my experience, this was the difference between performing leadership and truly showing up as a leader and authentically showing up as the leader that I wanted to be. I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be warm. I also wanted to be competent. I mean, let's face it, none of us go into work wanting to be seen as incompetent or incapable. It is important, and especially at a senior level, we want to make sure that we do demonstrate our competency. So this isn't about taking competency off the table. It's thinking about how you go into these different scenarios, different conversations, the meetings, the presentations, those professional situations and environments that you go into, and checking in, what are you leading with? Are you leading with warmth or are you leading with competency? And when you lead with warmth and follow with competency, it's going to go so much better. So I would love to know how you're showing up with your team right now and where you find yourself leading with competency rather than warmth. What would be different if you led with warmth instead? As always, I have the same question for you. Now you know what you know. What will you do differently? How will you turn the learning from this video into a next step? You've taken the time to listen to this video. How do we now turn that into action? Remember, keep it small, keep it simple, and keep it specific. And when I say specific, think about something in the next 7 days that you know is happening where you can apply this learning. Where can you go in and practice doing something differently that might lead to a different outcome? Where's your opportunity to go and test and try what you are learning? This has also been written as a blog. I will pop the link into the notes below. So if you would prefer to read this, and there's a little bit more detail in the blog too, then go and check that out. There are other free resources. If you have landed on the YouTube channel, there are other videos like this. There's also the weekly podcast where I share my 3 light bulbs from my client work every week so that you can learn from those sessions too. And if you want a little bit more, we have the leadership community, which has a live workshop every month, picking up topics that leaders are talking about. It also includes a group coaching session. So there's continuous professional development on your leadership, helping you to be more efficient and effective and build that confident and resilient, self-sufficient team. There is also the 8-week program that works on the same topics in a structured way in a group environment. And there's also one-to-one coaching. If you would like more than the free content that is available, head to the website. Let's book in a call. I'd love to have a conversation with you and see how I can support. That's it for today's video, and I will be back very soon. Another topic, something else to support you on your leadership journey.